What's going on? You're listening to The Engine on YouTube. Got a very special episode for you today. Glad to have you in. Johnny Fogel, Nick Freeman, Nick Falk. We're finally doing the top 50 NBA players of all times list. Today we've got 50 through 41. Tomorrow's going to be the next 9 and then the next 9. But at the end, when we have 1 and 2, Michael Jordan and LeBron, not going to say where each one falls yet because we're going to have a debate video and we're going to come to a consensus. Who is the best player of all time? That's going to be a very special video. We're looking forward to that in the next couple of days. But today we've got 50 to 41. But before we can start that, Nick Freeman has an announcement.
Yeah, first off, it'll actually probably this series will probably spread out over maybe 2 weeks. So we're gonna have some smaller episodes in between. Also, follow us at The Engine on Insta. It really helps on Instagram. And we're gonna be posting our personal lists, which we're not saying on the show. We're just saying our combined list that we made, but our personal list you will be able to find on at The Engine on Instagram. So then starting it off on our combined list was 50 James Worthy of the Los Angeles Lakers, 3-time NBA champ, finals MVP one of those years. He was a 2-time All-NBA, made the All-Star game a lot. He averaged around 17 points per game through his career, had a couple seasons over 20 points per game. So obviously a very well accomplished player. He was always a little overshadowed by Magic Johnson and Kareem on those Lakers team, but was a really good glue guy and a great third option for those teams.
Yeah, I think the most important thing about James Worthy is that he showed up in the biggest moments. Game 7 of the 1988 finals, he put up 36, 16, and 10, which is just insane. I mean, He always put on a show, and he fit really well with Magic in that Showtime Lakers offense, being a fast, dunking small forward.
Very interesting that he went number 1 overall, and it's interesting that he was overshadowed a lot by Magic and Kareem, but never too much. Like when it looked like he wasn't maybe as good as one of them, he would always show up in big moments, like you said. And it just like being like a 7-time All-Star, like he always kept his weight up, and he always just kept up his side. And he's just like a good player to have on your team. He's a good role player.
Mm-hmm.
All right, 49, Ray Allen. 10-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA, and 2-time NBA champion for the Celtics and the Heat. So he's one of the most clutch shooters of all time. I can still remember that Game 6 against the Spurs where he catches the ball, gets his feet down before the out-of-bounds line, and chucks it up. Just one of the most amazing shots ever. He's one of the most clutch players ever, and he's just amazing from the three-point line, basically everywhere.
I think that's maybe the most memorable, important, I don't want to say important, but one of maybe the most memorable shots in NBA history, because the Heat looked unbeatable for the past 2 or 3 years, and they're about to lose to this Spurs team with old Tim Duncan and old Tony Parker. But the thing about Ray Allen is he came into the league. People forget the second year he was in the league in 1998, he was in the dunk contest. Like he was not a shooter yet. And then you go all the way down the line to 2007. He averaged 26 a game with KG and Ray Allen. Can't forget about KG and Paul Pierce. You can't forget about that team. And he's had so much success on 3 teams: the Bucks, the Celtics, the Heat. It's crazy to me that he's come from the dunk contest to probably one of the most influential players in NBA history. I'd give that to Steph Curry, but he made the 3-point shot so influential.
Yeah, that shot, you need to remember, was a wash for Ray Allen. And he was still putting up huge shots like that. Another thing is before he was that 3rd or 4th man on that Celtics championship team that we all remember, he was with the Bucks and the Supersonics putting up over 20 points per game, being their number 1 guy. They couldn't necessarily win with him, but he still was putting up a lot more scoring than he did later in his career. So he does have that gene of being able to score the ball towards the top of the NBA.
All right, moving on. At 48, we have Willis Reed, who none of us have obviously seen personally because he played in, the 60s and the 70s. But he did have a very respectable career, scoring around 19 a game, 13 rebounds. Although he did only play for 9 years, just every year, it just seems like he came and he improved, except towards the later years of his career, he's going 13 to 11 points a game. But just a very consistent player and very influential for these 2010 guys now that you see in the NBA.
I agree. He had an MVP season in 1970, which is one of the best eras of basketball. You had a lot of stars coming in, like beginning of Kareem, end of Bill Russell and Wilt. He also won the finals twice, which is super impressive because he did that while there were still those stars that I just mentioned in the NBA with that really underrated Knicks team. By the way, both times that they won the finals, he was the finals MVP, which I find to be really impressive. He's an amazing defender, a great rebounder, as you said, very influential player today.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and act like I watched him, but I had him a little low on my list because his stats just seemed a little underwhelming, and he only played for 9-10 years. So he does seem like a really influential Knicks player. He's the only Knicks player to win an MVP, but, you know.
At number 47, Reggie Miller of the Indiana Pacers. Sorry, that's some weird technical difficulties. He averaged over 18 points per game, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. He had 1 year where he averaged almost 25 points per game. He did that a couple times. He has the second most threes ever, which was recently passed by Ray Allen. But I honestly believe that there would be no Ray Allen if there wasn't a Reggie Miller. That's why I had Reggie Miller higher. He was a 3-time All-NBA, 5-time All-Star. He was able to win on his own. I'm not saying he was ever able to beat Jordan, but he was able to make the playoffs with those Pacers teams. That's kind of why I had him above Ray Allen.
Yeah, 5-time NBA All-Star, 3-time All-NBA selection. I mean, basically all he did, if you watch him play, was the Pacers would just set a million screens up around, and he'd just run around and shoot threes. But he was one of the best trash talkers, and just, I don't know how many players I'd rather have in the last 24 seconds of the game. It was pretty amazing how many clutch shots he had.
I absolutely love Reggie Miller. It was him with the 32 seconds left, right? With 8 points.
No, that's McGrady. It was him with 9 seconds left.
It was him with 9 seconds left, excuse me. But I look at Reggie Miller, and I agree with you. There is no Reggie Miller without Ray Allen. And I think this is a little unfair to say that Ray Allen had more success because Ray Allen's role wasn't the same as Reggie Miller. But I did have Ray Allen higher on the list just because he won NBA championships, even though it wasn't 100%, like he wasn't the leader. But you talk about just like swagger, and he puts the swagger onto the court, and he's just not a player that I enjoy playing against. Like you talk about like Patrick Beverly now, like he's just going to be in your face the entire game, and he's going to give you everything he has till the final horn.
By the way, one more thing, you might be asking how a group of high schoolers are watching Reggie Miller during this quarantine. I know all three of us are just grinding out those hardwood classics and watching those 90s players, which is a super fun part.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. There's surprisingly a lot of them on YouTube. All right, 46, Bob Cousy. He won 6 championships with Bill Russell, 13-time All-Star, 12-time All-NBA. I've heard lots of greats say he was their favorite point guard growing up. I mean, again, I didn't actually watch him play, but he seemed like a pretty good player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on here. All right. 45, I guess.
Yep. Dominique Wilkins. Player that actually have looked at footage for, but Dominique Wilkins, one of the most athletic players I'd say in NBA history, really put dunking on the map. Fought with Michael Jordan in 2 dunk contests. Probably should have won the first one. Didn't win the second one. So this guy's an absolute scorer. You can just look across the board. He only had 2 seasons where he was averaging under, I believe, 25 or 22 a game. He had 30 a season in 1985, 1986. He's an absolute animal. Like I said, one of the most athletic players, but underratedly, really good defender. Consistently throughout his career, he was getting around to steal a game in one of his seasons. In his best season where he had 30, he had 1.8 steals. Just great player.
He's another guy who was always really overshadowed. A very underrated all-time scorer. He just never really got that recognition because of Larry Bird, because of Magic Johnson, and later because of Jordan. But he was a scoring champion in that 85-86 season. He could light it up, and also definitely one of the best dunkers in NBA history. There's a reason they called him the human highlight reel.
Yeah. Unfortunately, no championships, but as you said, he was overshadowed by Jordan. He could fly, but unfortunately, Jordan could also fly. So everyone was focused on Jordan, and no one really cared about Dominique Wilkins. And he kind of invented the windmill, too, which was kind of cool.
Does that make Dominique Wilkins overrated? Because a lot of people have said on their overrated list that Dominique Wilkins is one of the most overrated players.
I think he's underrated.
I think he's properly rated. At least in our list, he's properly rated.
Yeah, on our list, I like where he is.
Yeah.
All right, next at 44, Paul Pierce, mostly of the Boston Celtics. He averaged 20 points per game through his career, 5.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists. Those stats are a little lower because at the end of his career, he was playing for the Wizards and Clippers, where his role was a lot smaller. In 2006, though, he did average 27 points per game. He was an NBA champion in 2008. He also won the Finals MVP for that Celtics team, 10-time All-Star, 4-time All-NBA. Just a great scorer and shooter. And on those 2000 Celtics teams, which we talked about Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, Rajon Rondo, he was the best scorer on that team, the best offensive player. Even though a lot of people think he's kind of overrated because he's a terrible analyst and was talking trash to Dwayne Wade, he still could get it done in his day.
Yeah. Personally, I think he's a little overrated. Maybe that does factor in because I don't really like him on TV. But he was never really at the top of the league in scoring. He was a really good playoff scorer, but I think it was a little overrated of how good of a scorer he was. He was a solid scorer, but not the best. He was clutch, but he wasn't insanely clutch. So I would have him a little lower, but he is a good player.
I think he just had the benefit of the doubt of being on a really good team with like KG and
I also agree with that.
Rajon Rondo. Yeah, so I never thought Paul Pierce was like insanely more athletic than another player and insanely more talented than another player. He's obviously a really good scorer. It just seemed like maybe he wasn't as good as other people when he was a kid, but he just worked really, really hard, and I respect that. Like, he worked really, really hard to get where he was at. He worked really hard to get to Kansas. I mean, you look at his best season where he had 27 a game. That's crazy. Like, Paul Pierce on a team with other, like KG, and he's the leading scorer is crazy to me, even though he only won one finals. But I think he's a little overrated, but I guess, like what you said with the TV analytics, they're not
helping his cause.
Not helping his cause. But moving on to what are we on? 43. We've got the glove. We've got Gary Payton. Very interesting player to me. But Gary Payton, he never got to win the finals, but he lost to Jordan in the finals. And you just talk about a really good scorer, defender type player. And Gary Payton, he's just one of the not original, but really good two-way player. And he just gives you everything he has. And he's just a really great player, good guy to have on your team.
He was one of my favorite players in almost all of the NBA. 9-time All-Star, 9-time All-NBA, 9-time All-Defense. One of the best defensive guards ever. NBA Defensive Player of the Year in 1996. He did a little bit of a championship run with the Heat, but he didn't do much. That was ring chasing. But he's the most pestering player, one of the most pestering players in NBA history. So good at plucking the ball right out of your hands. And he was actually a pretty underrated scorer, but I just love his trash talking, and I think he's one of the most underrated players in NBA history.
I agree with all that. He averaged 3 steals in 1996, which is incredible. You never see point guards get Defensive Player of the Year. It's so rare. And Gary Payton did it. He was always all defensive, just an absolute stud and pest, as you said. And when you alluded to his underrated scoring, he averaged 24 points per game in 2000. Throughout his career, he was averaging 16, but he was putting up 20 when he was with the Supersonics, so he still did have some offensive abilities.
Yeah, for sure. All right, 42, Kevin McHale, 7-time All-Star, 6-time All-Defensive, which most people don't know about him, 2-time Sixth-Man, 1 NBA All-Selection, and 3 championships with Larry Bird. His post moves were pretty unstoppable. He's one of the first players to really focus on footwork, and I also think he's an extremely underrated defender. So I actually think he was a little low on our list just because of he actually was a pretty good defender despite being white, and not many people thought he was.
Yeah, you had him higher than Johnny and I. Personally, I think he was a perfect fit next to Larry Bird, which he obviously was. He was a winner and a really good defender. I just think he wasn't really able to do it on his own, which is something I like to see out of these guys. All of his success really came next to Larry Bird, next to Robert Parrish on those great Celtics teams. I don't really know if you individualize Kevin McHale, how great of a player he was.
I think it's interesting with Kevin McHale, wasn't really a starter. Like, most of his games, he was coming up
towards the end of his career. He was coming off the bench.
A lot of his games, like, in the end, he was coming up the bench. But I think it's interesting with Kevin McHale, like, people are going to overshadow him like what you said, like people don't think he was that good of a defender because he was white. That's very interesting to me, but I think he's properly rated. But the underrated defense aspect is an interesting touch that you throw in there. But I think he's properly rated.
I agree. Next, 41, Rick Barry, another very forgotten player who none of us really got to see. But throughout his career, he averaged 25 points per game, almost 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and a 90% free throw shooter, legendarily shooting it underhand. Also, in 1967, he averaged 35.6 points per game and 9 rebounds, which is a ridiculous stat line. This guy obviously could get it done. He won an NBA championship in 1975 and was the Finals MVP, was the Rookie of the Year, 6-time All-NBA, 4-time All-ABA, so he was in that kind of confusing era, was always an All-Star, and he averaged over 30 points per game 4 times. Obviously, he's one of the most underrated scorers ever, which is just crazy. I think he's probably a pretty bad person, or I've heard a lot of rumors about him being a bad person.
I've heard that too.
But still, he could get it done. And I think you just need to imagine if there was a 3-point line, how many points per game would this guy be scoring? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's definitely true. He's one of the players, I think he was a little low on the list. I think I had him around this point. But he helped transition the NBA and the ABA, which I think is a really big factor. And as you said, he's a really underrated scorer, and I can't imagine how many points he would have if there was a 3-point line.
I think it's interesting that he lost a year of his career in 1967 and 1968 because he got legally barred from playing in the ABA, which is pretty interesting. But in the ABA, he was playing 41 minutes a night. In 1971, he was playing 45 minutes a night. This guy's an absolute animal. You've got to think that he's just been worked so hard on his stamina. I don't know if you could just play 40. Like, there's only so few players in the NBA, like history, like LeBron, who has the most minutes in the NBA history by far. But 45 minutes a night is wearing. He played 40 minutes a night on 4 different seasons. That's insane to me. Very incredible, but, never got to see him play.
Yeah, you don't really see guys like that today.
All right, well, I think that'll close it up. Johnny?
Yeah, that should do it for this episode. We've got other episodes planned for the future. We're going to have a couple more 2-minute drill episodes flowing into the YouTube channel for the next couple of weeks. Like Nick Freeman said at the beginning of the show, this is going to be like a 2-week series. It's not just going to be throwing in all the content. But if you guys enjoyed this video, comment, like, share, subscribe it if you got to the end. Thank you so much. Comment what you think we should do in the future, anything like that. But hope you guys have a good rest of your day and hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you so much.
Yeah, 40 through 31 should be done by the end of this week. Also, send your lists if you want to. Thank you for listening.
Yep.